Our mission hasn't changed. Our vision hasn't changed. Our purpose hasn't changed. The value that we deliver hasn't changed. The way that we deliver it has to change, right? That was a pivot, right? So we said, you know what, we're going to change the way we do things.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And we are honored to be with you here in 2021. All you essential doctors out there and your amazing, remarkable teams. Thank you so much for tuning into this podcast, the Remarkable CEO Podcast. We are so grateful for you. Thankful to be running with you. We're also thankful to hear from so many of you who have reached out to us and said you're grateful. I had a couple of people reach out to me during December who I have never met, and I was able to be encouraged by them. And they, shared with me how this podcast has just been awesome for them. And so I'm so thankful that this has been a resource for you. We pray and hope that this will continue to encourage you, challenge you, help you make some necessary adjustments in your business, mindset, in your behaviors. Remember, the CEO goes through two transformations, an identity shift and a behavioral shift. And the goal here of this podcast is to continue to support you as being the CEO of your business. And this applies not only to your business, but we know this translates into your life. And Dr. Stephen, I'm excited for this episode. I love all of our episodes, but this one is just really fresh. It's a fire it's starting to ignite. And I'm really excited to talk about the word that we're going to be focusing on this year that we really feel strongly about, how we need to approach our businesses in 2021. Dr. Stephen, this is just such an important episode. We're going to get into it now.
Yeah, you said it, Dr. Pete. So today's about framing, right? So I love what Roberto Monaco loves to say, whoever sets the frame wins the game. So we're all showing up in 2021 to win the game, right? So let's set the frame. We're going to look back at 2020 and we're going to recognize it was definitely a frame around 2020. And that frame was sort of thrown at us. And that we didn't see that frame coming, right? So, and when we say the frame, we all sort of landed in this situation, and the situation pushed us into a place of reaction and reactivity. And, we set a frame for this and our reaction to the situation, and we put a word to it. And that word really created a structure that drove a great deal of behavior, really organized a lot of behavior for us and for our teams. And the word for 2020 was pivot, right? So you saw it everywhere, you heard it everywhere. And I'll boldly say that I think you heard it here first, because I know that it was in March when we were faced with the decision of, do we go live with our live event that we had scheduled to do in Chicago in March? And we were starting to see all the shutdowns and the restrictions and the regulations that were coming down the pike in reaction to this COVID crisis, this Pearl Harbor moment, right? That we had to react to as a business. And there was a lot of hemming and hawing going on, right? People are like, what are we going to do? And we're going to stand around, we're going to wait, and we're going to see what happens and wait and see. And you know what? That's not how CEOs behave, right? CEOs step in, lean in, and make a proclamation, right? You say, okay, team, everybody huddle up. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to pivot, right? So that became the theme. That became the word of 2020. And it was the appropriate strategy, right? It was the appropriate strategy for 2020 because we didn't see COVID coming, right? So that was a reactive strategy, right? So what I'm going to suggest is, if you thought 2020 was cute, you're going to love 2021, because I'm seeing 2021 is going to have some its own tricks up its sleeves. So I'm going to suggest we take a more proactive stance here, and that instead of a reactive strategy, let's embrace an adaptive strategy. And I'm going to say it right now, Dr. Pete, if pivot was the word for 2020, agile will be the word for 2021.
Man, this is so powerful. Dr. Stephen, when you showed me your little yellow Post-it note, as is not uncommon in how we communicate through Zoom. All of you are adapting as well and pivoting. We're getting used to this virtual world. So he showed me a little yellow Post-it, and it had a very simple word on it. And it said agile. And I was like, oh gosh, here we go. There's so much underneath this. And so we knew this was it. This was the word. And we are actually positioning this word for you, I believe, right now, so that you can position it for yourself and your team. The reality is, as you said, Dr. Stephen, when we look back, we learn lessons and we apply those lessons to now. That's called wisdom. Okay. So we gain insight, right? Insight from past experiences. When we apply it in the present, that's called being wise, right? So this is a wise word for you this year, my friends, because what we're basically saying is we've learned quite a bit over our careers, and we've learned a lot from last year. And what we've learned from last year is, and we're in the storm, is, you know what? We had to pivot last year. We had to do that. And that was as you said it so well, Dr. Stephen, that was a reactive strategy. And it was brilliant. It was spot on. It was exactly what was needed. It was the exact right thing to do. However, you can't stay there. Okay. You can't stay in that. You have to grow out of that. We have to mature beyond that. And that's what this is. This is us saying, hey, it may still feel like that, but we can't. It's because we have to develop the fitness. We have to develop the muscle from the scar tissue that healed up. We got to get healed, and we got to move forward. We've got to learn the lessons and apply them now. What are we going to do moving forward? That's what this conversation is, my friends. That's what this is. This is about us applying what we've learned, and we're defining it with a very simple word: agile. That is an adaptive strategy. I love that. I love that. We talk about this in chiropractic. We love adaptive physiology. The idea of reaction sometimes is important. It was last year as a reactive strategy, blindsided by the Pearl Harbor moment. This is saying, all right, if we're in peacetime and we went to wartime, and right now we're still wartime, we're gonna be agile. Because you know what? There may be more bombs that get dropped, but you know what? We're learning how to live in a war zone. We're going to learn how to thrive in a war zone. We're going to learn how to win the game even now. So, Dr. Stephen, this is such an important word of encouragement, of direction for you CEOs, for all of us to embrace this year. I really believe to develop the agility that's needed to be agile in the marketplace, agile in our space chiropractically. So man, I'm just, we're going to go into some really important concepts in this episode, man. So, just continue just to stay focused as you're listening, because we're about to dig into some things that are really important concepts, really important for you strategically moving forward.
Yeah. CEOs, when we say whoever sets the frame wins the game, it's a frame of mind, right? So you're talking about your own frame of mind. You're talking about your team's frame of mind. You're talking about your patient-based, your practice members, right? So your clients, your customers, the community, you get to set the frame of mind, right? So this means mindset, right? So we all know that we went from peacetime to wartime in 2020. This COVID crisis shifted us into a wartime leadership, and our battle cry was pivot, right? So whenever it hit the fan, we would just go, well, guess what? Pivot, right? And tell me that word wasn't a relief. It was the right thing. Everybody heard it. It's like, yeah, you know what? Pivot, which means that you just got confidence based on the other things you had pivoted around. You're like, okay, so here's the deal. Our expectation was that we would see this dynamic situation was going to throw things at us that we didn't really see before. And, as much as we recognize, listen, our mission hasn't changed. Our vision hasn't changed. Our purpose hasn't changed. The value that we deliver hasn't changed. The way that we deliver it has to change, right? That was a pivot, right? So we said, you know what, we're going to change the way we do things. And pivot became that go-to phrase, that word that gave everybody just a moment to get focused and relief and be like, yeah, you know what, we can do this. We got this, right? And like Dr. Pete said, that was that was the appropriate stance to take in 2020, but it's not sustainable, right? You can't just stay in that place, right? Because everybody feels the fatigue around this already right now, right? So when we said we're going to charge into the storm in 2020, running into the storm, that metaphor was just so absolutely appropriate, because we all know, how storms function. I'm a surfer, right? So we understand storms. So, I got to tell you, I've got this sort of strange love for hurricanes and hurricane season. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want anybody property damage. I want those hurricanes to stay off the coast and come up the coast and send us those beautiful south swells, right? So we can go out and surf. But we know how these storms function, whether you're talking about a hurricane, or you're talking about a tornado, right? So there is a head wall of strong winds and chaos, and then you get into the eye of the storm where it's calm and quiet in the middle. You got to get through that wall of that storm to get to the calm. But guess what? To get out of that storm, you got to go through the other wall as well, right? So there's a backside to this storm as well. And that's what we're facing right now, is that we've got to get through this second wall, right? So we know this, and we should show up expectant, right? So we should not be reactive. We should be adaptive. And we know that the definition of wellness is the body's ability to adapt readily and appropriately, right? So we should show up expectant with an attitude of, listen, now we got to make sure that we recognize the situation is fluid. So we need to show up and be flexible, not rigid, right? So we have to show up, and we have to recognize that now is the time to be responsive, not reactive. And we need to be fluid, but not flimsy, right? At the same time, we just have to show up as a team and recognize it's like, okay, this is it. We have a plan. But the new standard for a plan in 2021, the new standard for an agile team, is that we have contingencies. We have plan A, and we have plan B, and we have plan C, as many plans as it takes, so that we are not just pivoting in the moment and making it up as we go. That worked in 2020. There's a new standard for 2021 with the truly agile team. We show up and we say, plan A, plan B, plan C. If this, then that. If this, then that. And if this, then that. It's like the Navy SEALs. They show up to every situation and say, okay, so here's our plan A, here's our plan B, here's our plan C. We got to be agile.
Hey, CEO, there are 3 skill sets that drive high-performing teams: hiring right, clear expectations and agreements, productive delegation, training, and equipping. This is Dr. Pete, and you're invited to join myself, Dr. Steven, and our entire TRP coaching team for the awesome 2-day 2021 kickoff event, the Remarkable Team Building Immersion. January 15th and 16th, hosted in the US, and February 5th and 6th, hosted from Australia. We're going virtual, which means that no matter where you are in the world, you can make it. Our 5 2020 virtual immersions were awesome. We learned and improved the experience each and every time, setting up 2021 virtual events to be even better. Of course, we miss being live and in person, but the upside is more full teams are able to attend the events together, and practices are growing. And we're releasing our new workshop format for 2021 immersions. Pick from a series of 12 specific workshops designed for the unique positions on your team. Whether you're a front desk check-in CA, checkout CA, tech CA, back office CA, office manager, COO, associate DC, or CEO, there will be a separate and distinct breakout workshop that will be powerful for your role. And CEO, you can head back to work Monday knowing your team is equipped, confident, and on fire. We will skill drill your team until they have it nailed. Don't miss this one chance. The team building immersion only happens once a year. And when you register now, you'll get 66% off tickets for yourself and your team. This seminar is regularly $2,997 when you attend a live venue. It's now available online for only $997 because it will be streaming live. Now go to remarkablepractice.com/events to get your tickets. And now back to our conversation. Yeah, and I love this conversation, Dr. Steven, especially with the rigid versus flexible and fluid versus flimsy. I really think we need to dig into this a bit, because I think sometimes as CEOs, we can become very rigid, right? We, as an owner, as a CEO, as an entrepreneur, even, and actually typically not entrepreneurial. More entrepreneur is a way more fluid word. It's a very it is, but I think sometimes we can become very rigid. Like, this is how we do what we do, and we got set in our ways. And I think what the value of the pivot was last year was it actually forced us to start to develop some muscles maybe that we haven't exercised in a while. Maybe when we started our practice, we were super entrepreneurial and we were adapting and we were innovating. We were figuring out new systems and ways to get people in and convert them. And then we developed systems and we did that. But then all of a sudden we got, so to speak, comfortable. Like, well, we've kind of got it figured out and dialed in. Really? Do we? I don't know. Well, then all of a sudden this happens. You're like, oh, wow, we got really exposed this year. And so as a result of that, we discovered the fact that we need to develop this muscle. We need to become fit. We actually developed through pivoting the understanding that to be truly successful in business long-term, you have to be agile. That's what was the big discovery in 2020. Going into this era, this next decade of business, this is how we're going to have to show up. We're going to be agile, not only this year, but from here on out. And it's the result of the pivot. The pivot was the adjustment, and that created a more agile business leader. You either are going to grow through this, or you're going to go out of business, right? It's you're either going to come out of this and come ahead. There's no like cruise control. There's no just floating through. You don't float through a storm. I mean, you're a surfer, I'm not, but you better show up ready. You're gonna charge through that wave. You're gonna go out there in this storm. I mean, have anybody been out in the water in an ocean when it's crazy? I mean, those are red flags for a reason. You're not supposed to go in there. Only the surfers are allowed in there because they're crazy. And so we've got to be adaptive. So Dr. Stephen, I'm going to share this. This is just a thought. Literally, as we're unpacking this, it's just amazing. So I took agile and I said, how would I define agile? I defined it in 5 ways. The first is agile means I'm adjustable. So when I have a patient that comes in, and you guys know this, you have a patient that comes in who's not receiving the adjustment. Y'all know what that feels like. Versus the patient who they're open and they're receiving it. It's a world of difference as a practitioner when you lay your hands on somebody who's adjustable and somebody who's just not being adjustable. It's that rigid resistance that we need to remove. Okay. So the first thing of agility is we have to be adjustable. Like it's a posture. It's a way of being. It's how I show up. I'm an adjustable person. Like, oh, I go to Dr. Franson's and he adjusts me this way and I love getting adjusted by him. I can't wait till my next adjustment. But I have to be adjustable. That's the first. The second is we have to exercise grit. If you look at the definition, if you think about how is grit defined, it's passion, perseverance, and persistence. That's how we define what grit is. Passion, perseverance, and persistence for what? For the long term. So what we've been through, what it feels like forever, the longest yard, the longest year, we have to be developing muscles for the long game. And I think this kind of made us really have to come to grips with that. Like, okay, this might be the way we have to be for a long time, is figuring out how do we operate in a market like this, in a world like this. So we have to have grit, passion, perseverance, persistence for the long term. The third is innovative. Like this is actually one of our core values actually, is innovative means that I'm receiving ideas and thoughts, and I'm able to take them in and take strategies. I'm open to receiving strategies and implementing strategies, so that I can continue to fulfill my mission, fulfill my purpose. It's always so that I'm moving forward towards my purpose, towards my mission. Like you said, we didn't change the value of what we delivered. We didn't change our mission. We just simply changed the way we went about it. That's innovative, right? So that's an innovative response. So that's another way. That's number 3. Number 4 is leadership. If we're going to be agile, we're going to exercise the leadership muscle. And the leadership muscle answers the question, who do I need to become? It's a becoming. It's not like, who am I? It is who I am, but it's also who I'm becoming. And in the agile framework, It's a leadership development framework. It's saying, I am developing my leadership muscle. I am asking the question, who do I need to become in the context of this space and this position and posture of being agile, of an adaptive person? How do I lead in an adaptive way versus a rigid way? I'm used to leading as the dictator, but now I'm going to lead adaptively. Like, who is that? I don't want to feel like a flimsy leader. I want to be flexible and firm, but I also want to be strong, but I want to be able to, you know what I'm saying? So that's that leadership muscle. And then the last of the 5 is expectant. We want to be expectant, which is I expect it, which means I'm prepared. It's plan, prepare, execute, assess. So I'm in an expectant state. I'm showing up prepared with my contingency plans. I show up with them ready. I got my tool belt. What do you need? Drill? What do you need? Hammer? What do you need? Screwdriver? What do you need? You need a measuring. I got it. What do you need? A level? You need a stud finder? I got it. It's all here. So we want to be prepared in this time. And again, that's, to me, this is how we're showing up this year.
So good, man. So good. I loved it. I loved every part of that. The leadership part really stuck out to me because this is the new and next iteration of you, Doc, as a leader, right? So how many people agree that we all grew up quite a bit in 2020 as leaders, right? What a blessing that was, right? So it's like after a brutal squat workout, you take a good night's sleep and you're, back the next day. Well, here we are in 2021 and your quads are stronger, right? So your ability to push has just been elevated, right? So yes, it might've sucked in the throes of the moment, right? So, but guess what? You are a better athlete now. You are a better leader now, right? So, guys, this is such an incredibly loaded episode with opportunity for you to frame out this year for yourself and for your team and for other chiropractors in your circle. So, whoever sets the frame wins the game. When we talk about frame, we're talking about this framing out your mindset, right? And making sure that you understand that you are going to be casting a vision for 2021 for your team. I'm going to encourage you to use the term agile so that they can stand on the granite rock of that concept of, listen, at the end of the day, the person that shows up ready, expectant for change and willing and ready to adapt to those situations readily and appropriately is the one that's going to win. Dr. Pete, incredible. I love this. I'm so ready for 2021. If pivot was the word for 2020, agile is the word for 2021. I know our team has set that mindset. We've set that frame and we're ready for the situations that are to come. We know that we've got great challenges and great blessings ahead in 2021. No question about it. But it's the attitude that we're showing up with that's going to really be the determining factor of our outcomes, because your attitude is what primes your physiology, and your physiology determines your performance, and your performance will drive your outcomes. So 2021, the year of being agile.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.